Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dungeon Master Solutions. This is the second Dungeon Master Solutions podcast. I am GMKC, and today we have my good friend Ian with us. Thanks for stopping by, Ian.
Always a pleasure.
Today, we're going to be talking about weapons, more specifically, the Greatsword versus the Greataxe. What do you know, Ian? What do you know about the Greatsword, the Greataxe?
They are both great options, but if you want to break down the stats, look at page 149 of your player's handbook. You can get a Greataxe for 30 gold pieces. It does 1d12 worth of slashing damage. It is 7 pounds. It is heavy, and you have to use 2 hands to wield it. The Greatsword, a little bit pricier, 50 gold pieces. It does 2d6 slashing damage. It is 6 pounds, a little bit lighter, but it's still heavy, and you still have to wield it with 2 hands.
So, in that case, right off the bat, which one gets you excited? Which one do you like to use in battle?
Before we started this, swords, hands down, but doing the research, I really like the Greataxe as well. I think they're both just really cool. Greataxe kind of gives you that a little bit of like anger, a little bit of edge to it. The Greatsword, it's just classic. It's got that flavor. It's, you have a little bit more finesse, a little bit more control. But again, they're both awesome.
Some might even say like one is more good, quote unquote. One is more evil. The bad guy always carries the big axe, and the good guy has the holy warrior sword.
Yes, like the headsman, or even Death, like kind of wielding like a axe with like the scythe kind of thing.
Yes, it's undeniably axe-like.
Yes.
Well, okay, so I've got some numbers to throw at you. These are a little intense, and I have to admit I was a liberal arts major, so math is not my strong suit. So a D12 does, on average, the D12 being the Greataxe, does 6.5 is the average damage output you're going to be getting with that. But the Greatsword with its 2d6s is going to be giving you the average output of 7. So right off the bat, the Greatsword seems strategically the better choice, just objectively. But got to look at those sweet standard deviations. And I won't throw you the precise details, but what those numbers give you, the information that tells you that the D12, it swings more wildly. So while the Greatsword will give you, on average, those sweet 7s, the D12s will give you the 2s and the 1s. Conversely, those big fat 11s and 12s. More often, I should say.
It does kind of give an edge to the Greatsword so far, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down, I think, to 2 things. 1, what kind of flavor you're going for, what kind of character you're going for, and 2, every tactician's favorite, the great weapon fighting style.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right, great weapon fighting. When you roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die for an attack you make with a melee weapon that you are wielding with 2 hands, you can reroll the die, and you must use the new roll, even if the new roll is a 1 or a 2. The weapon must have the 2-handed or versatile property for you to gain this benefit.
And I don't know if this tips, I don't think this thing alone tips the favor towards the Greataxe. I think it's still with the Greatsword, because when you're rolling D6s, re-rolling on a 1 or a 2, you get to re-roll a third of the time. Whereas when you're only re-rolling 1s and 2s on a D12, that's only 1/6 of the time.
Oh yeah, you're right, because it's a smaller range for sure.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, you kind of have to give it to the Greatsword. But flavor-wise, what kind of character would get you excited to use a Greataxe there, Ian?
Yes. Okay, so I recently played a silver Dragonborn Paladin of Bahamut named Hal, but I could definitely see him just and he was level 20, so he was a Paladin, and he actually could sprout wings, was like his level 20 ability. Ooh. So just imagine almost like Valkyrie style, this silver Dragonborn flying in. I could definitely see him wielding an axe. He had like a halberd in the game, but an axe would do just as well.
In the Viking mythology, do the Valkyries carry axes?
They should. I mean, I can see them in my mind. I can see them wielding all sorts of weapons, but yeah, axes for sure too.
It seems like the axe is, at least for me, I culturally associate it more than any other culture really with the Vikings.
I mean, it makes sense though too, because they're like, in the northern forests, it's like not only for weaponry, but it's also practical.
Practical tool, yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely. When it comes to me, my go-to archetype when it comes to, big burly weapon wielder is Conan the Barbarian, man. I fell in love with those movies when I watched them. I saw them embarrassingly late, like only 2 years ago or so, but they're amazing. They're awesome.
I still need to watch them. So don't.
Oh, I won't spoil it, but I will say this: the second movie is my favorite. It is a D&D campaign.
The Conqueror? Is it that what's called, Conan the Conqueror or something? Or
anyway,
I'll look it up. No, I'll look it up.
But it kicks ass. It's very cool. Now, oh yes, and in fact, we're talking about D&D characters. In that level 20 campaign with you, I played Corbin the Barbarian, the aging hero, and of course, I had to use a sword. That was my chance to live out the barbarian fantasy, man.
Oh, it was so funny. Yeah, you had saved the world a dozen times over, but for this quest, you just needed to get some like tea or something, or some arthritis medicine or something.
Absolutely, man. I love to include just ridiculous backstories into these like very serious campaigns. It adds that little level of levity,
Oh yeah. Plus you're like, I'm getting too old for this, as you're like slaying, fire giants and everything like that.
It's amazing. And as I was lucky enough to get the killing blow on the fire dragon.
Yes.
And I loved hamming it up. And when I landed on the ground, I was just like, oh, my back.
By fire dragon, yeah, you mean like a fire god deity, like the god, like a dragon god that we're fighting. It was wild. Plus Corbin was riding the back of it as you were like diving underneath lava and coming up, and yeah, it was wild.
I dumped all my it was a level 21 shot. I dumped all my stats into con, and barbarians at a certain level get mad just con bonuses anyway. So I was afraid at first, and the dragons kept flying down into the magma, and I was only taking like 50 damage on a turn, and so I was like, whatever, I'll just fight.
Meanwhile, Hal, he fell into the lava, and then like someone had to like Misty step me out of there or something like that. He was about to go down.
But yeah, excellent. That's a very fun campaign for me, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Now, one thing I do want to mention, to you, going back to talk about our topic, great swords and great axes.
Yeah.
I had a player relatively recently who he loves dwarves. Dwarves are his favorite fantasy race, almost exclusively plays them. Shout out to Doug if you're listening.
Awesome.
And I remember he felt cheated. He felt cheated because obviously the dwarves have their racial proficiency in axes, and so that's kind of what he was going to have to choose. And he said, he was frustrated that he was pigeonholed to this presumably inferior weapon. What would you have done in that scenario? What kind of house rule would you do?
I think the simplest way is just, okay, you have an axe, let's just reskin it and say like, okay, you've got the Greatsword stats to it. Okay, so just roll 2d6. If it's, really taking the enjoyment out of the game, and what dwarf wields a Greatsword? They got to wield the axe,
Absolutely, of course. I agree, man. I agree. And moving forward, it's something I realized that ultimately you can change and things won't that's DM prerogative to just make your players happy. You're not giving them unfair advantage.
Oh, for sure. And I was looking through the DMG, and the axe kind of get the shaft, as it were. Like there were so many cool swords, like Frostbrand or Flamebringer or Flame Tongue, Luck Blades, like all the cool things. Just take those awesome abilities, just slap it on an axe, and you're good to go. I'm
a big proponent of taking very cool legendary magic items and slapping them on the wrong weapons, because if you have a crazy enchanted, maybe possessed sword, instead it's a dagger, so now it's hilarious.
Yes.
Now one last thing I would like to mention before we wrap up you mentioned that, hey, what dwarf carries an axe? Let me tell you what, though. Kudos to the Hobbit trilogy. They got a lot of things wrong. But an interesting thing is they let Thorin Oakenshield, he wields a sword.
Yeah, you're right.
Orcrist, right?
Oh, yes.
The Goblin Slayer, or the Foehammer, or whatever. Yeah.
Yes, and very famous. You also have Sting. You've got Glamdring, wielded by Gandalf. Beater and Biter, of course. They're goblin names, I guess. Yeah, just classic example of a dwarf wielding a sword. I can't believe that. Good job.
Yeah, I had to dig real deep because really, when people think of Tolkien's dwarves, they don't think of him. They think of Gimli, who, of course, is the original axe bro, right?
For sure. But while we're on Lord of the Rings, as we were researching, I did get inspired. So I was thinking, okay, like, what would happen if Aragorn's kingdom, this is 1,000 years later, it's falling into ruins. Someone takes the white tree of Gondor, shaves it down, it's cut down. He takes it, reshapes it into the haft or the shaft of an axe. And then remember Aragorn's sword, Narsil,
yes.
It was pieces. He has to reforge it again, but now it's an axe.
And he only has enough pieces to make the head of the axe.
Yes. And so now it's now it's a new legendary weapon and everything like that to save the day in the Fourth Age or something.
Dude, hey, change the name of, change some names, and you got to set up for a kick-ass campaign.
Yes. Also, who doesn't love a weapon with a nickname? The name of the sword was called, he renamed it Anduril, I think, and it's
the
quote,
Flame of the West.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who doesn't love a nickname for the weapon? Oh, dude. That reminds me of Fox Friend that was wielded by Alaika, our Tabaxi Barbarian too.
Yes, in your campaign.
Yeah.
So, it was an artifact axe, right?
I think I just slapped some cool properties on it, like we suggested. It was an axe originally, and I think we might have made it just +1. But as we leveled up in the campaign, she didn't want to let it go, so we said something happened, and all of a sudden it's magic now. Or
I've come across content on the DM's Guild that provides rules for heirloom weapons that grow and change and evolve as the player grows and changes and evolves.
I love that concept. It's so cool, because who wants to you've been fighting, this killed your first goblin when you were a level 1, you don't want to just throw it in the garbage or something.
Absolutely. But one last thing I mentioned, if we're talking about fancy axes made of magic wood, what I immediately think of is Thor from Endgame. Right, or rather Infinity War, but yes, so good, right?
Yeah, when it was Groot used himself, right? It was so wild.
In modern popular culture, he's a good example of a good guy with an axe.
That's true.
Opposed to bad guys.
Which takes me to Skyrim, the famous axe Wuthrod, right?
Oh yes,
wielded by Ysgramor. I did some research on this. It is said, when his people died, he cried tears of pure ebony, which were then forged into an axe. So he's actually taking tears of ebony, and they use that as the metal to make this axe, which he goes on to lead the 500 companions, right, to retake Skyrim and everything. So cool.
Oh yeah, dude. Great backstory there too.
Yeah. I also had written down, I love anime when they just have these over the top, literally no one could actually hold these axes or swords, but they're literally 8 times bigger than the person that they are.
Yes.
And they're just wielding it around like it's like a feather or something like that. It's super light. I love that concept.
Makes me think of an excellent 90s anime called Rurouni Kenshin, and the quote-unquote big guy, the main character's buddy, who's obviously huge, he carried one of those gigantic Buster swords from Final Fantasy. I love that vibe. It's awesome. Take even Soul Calibur, right?
Yeah.
Now, axes and swords in that game. The main there is the main evil force has a giant, the giant sword, and the main good force has a giant sword. So,
dude, you're reading my mind. I was just had this concept. Okay, either two rival blacksmiths or the same blacksmith had like two sons or something like that, and he wielded a sword for the one brother and an axe for the other brother, or brother sister. It doesn't matter. But then like all of a sudden the fates of these two weapons are just linked, and then throughout the ages, whoever wields the one is like gonna die by the other or fight the other, something like that.
And you could have it end up being like this like foreseen like enormous like end game battle like for like prophecy. And it's hey, DMs out there listening, go ahead, steal it. It's a cool idea. Take it.
Yeah, for sure.
You could even have it two of your players in the same party. One recovers one recovers the other. They don't know. And then they go on this quest to discover the true meaning of the weapons that they've got, and then maybe the campaign ends with a knockdown, drag out, like life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like it starts off with their they just get these urges to like in the heat of battle, like they come close to like hitting each other, but they don't know like, oh sorry, I didn't mean to get too close. I was, and slowly it starts like in the back of their mind.
And the DM can,
yes,
trickle it along. Yeah,
these are good. Isn't there like a warlock pact or something like that? With like an actual like a weapon, gives them their power or something.
The Hexblade Warlock, which
the
flavor I personally like to do a lot of changing with, but the mechanics are amazing, very cool. It's, the evil possessed weapon that it responds to your deity and you, of course, and. But yeah, dig it.
A lot of options. I'm loving it.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is all the time we have for today. Thanks for stopping by, Ian. I really hope to talk to you more about D&D soon.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, anytime.
This has been GMKC with Dungeon Master Solutions. See you next time.
See ya.